Have you ever had that strange feeling that something is about to happen, even when everything seems under control? That's how Daniel Rivera's day began. A businessman, successful, engaged to the perfect woman with the dream wedding on the horizon. All he needed to do was pick up the suit he had ordered months in advance, a simple appointment amid a busy schedule. But that day, as he stepped into the high-fashion boutique in Westwood, something in the air felt off, as if the universe was about to turn upside down, and he had no inkling. What can happen when the past suddenly reappears at the most important moment of your life? And what if that past comes in the form of a person you tried to forget for more than a decade? The answer to the first question is, everything can crumble. Even what you believed was completely settled. And for the second, no matter how much time has passed, certain presences have the power to dismantle you with a single glance. And that's exactly what happened. When Daniel saw Isabella, his ex-wife, in the middle of the atelier, with her hands on the suit for his wedding. The boutique was refined, quiet, with huge stained glass windows that let in light like a theater stage. Daniel was adjusting his tie in front of the mirror when an employee approached. "The suit is ready for the final fitting, Mr. Rivera." He nodded with a discreet smile, unaware of what awaited him. As he was led to the fitting room, he noticed the photos hanging on the walls. Brides, couples, families. For a moment, an old memory threatened to resurface, but he pushed it away. It wasn't time to get lost in the past, or so he thought. But the past did not ask for permission. She entered with calm, firm steps, her skilled hands holding the blazer he would wear on the most important day of his life. It was Isabella, and for a few seconds, Daniel couldn't move. Time stopped. She, the woman who had disappeared from his life 15 years earlier, was there with the same look that used to haunt his lonely nights, now hidden behind a neutral expression. "Good afternoon, Mr. Rivera," she said, as if she were just another client. And it was at that moment that Daniel realized what he thought he had overcome was only a sleep. Daniel tried to speak, but no words came out. It was as if his words were stuck somewhere between his chest and his throat. His eyes sought hers, but Isabella remained professional, cold, as if she were dealing with any other customer. He wanted to ask why she was there, why she had vanished, why now of all times. But all he managed was to silently nod when she asked him to try on the suit for adjustments. It seemed surreal. He, the man who controlled everything around him, was completely lost inside a luxury fitting room in Los Angeles. She approached with a measuring tape and pins, as if the years between them had never happened. The light touch on his back, the way her hands positioned the fabric on his shoulders. Everything awakened memories he had long buried. Isabella no longer wore heavy makeup as before, and her hair, now with some silver strands, was tied up in a simple bun. But what unsettled him the most was her gaze. A gaze that once filled with love was now only distant, impersonal, as if he were just another client. "The fabric sits well on the shoulders, but it will need a small adjustment at the waist," she said, without taking her eyes off the mirror. Daniel watched his reflection, the two of them side by side. So much had changed, and yet at the same time, it seemed that everything was still there. Every gesture of hers brought back moments lived in a small apartment downtown, when the two of them believed that love would be enough. But it wasn't, and he never understood why. "Do you still live in LA?" he ventured to ask, but Isabella only looked away, pretending not to hear. Her silence spoke louder than any answer. Time in that room seemed to slow down. The sound of scissors, footsteps in the corridor, even the soft ticking of an old clock on the wall. Everything seemed amplified. Daniel felt his anger growing, Anger at the lack of answers, anger at seeing her there as if nothing had happened, anger at not being able to control the situation. That woman had left an enormous void in his life, and now she was back as if by mere coincidence. He felt his blood boil, but something inside him said he needed to wait, that there was more behind this reunion, and he was about to find out. "All set," said Isabella, stepping back. "The suit will be finished by Friday." And without waiting for a response, she began gathering her materials. Daniel remained standing, still wearing the jacket, as if he hadn't processed what had just happened. It was as if she had come back only to vanish again, without an explanation, without an apology, without anything. He looked at himself in the mirror. The suit fit perfectly, but the man he saw reflected was no longer the same. Not after that encounter. That wasn't just a suit adjustment, it was a life adjustment. Later, in his office atop one of Los Angeles' tallest buildings, Daniel tried to regain focus. The sky was beginning to darken, and the city lights twinkled outside. But his mind was still stuck in that boutique fitting room. Instead of graphs and reports, he saw Isabella's eyes, the same eyes that were once home and that now stared at him with coldness. He poured himself a bourbon, something he only did on difficult days. And that day was, undoubtedly, one of them. His phone buzzed. It was a message from his fiancée, Julia Bennett. "How's the suit, love? I can't wait to see you in it." He stared at the screen for a few seconds and replied only, "I'll tell you later." The truth was that was the first time he had lied to Julia. They had been together for 2 years and he had never hidden anything. But how could he explain what had just happened? How could he tell her that the woman who had vanished from his life without a trace was alive in LA, sewing the suit for his new story? With his head spinning, Daniel called his assistant on speakerphone. "Brandon, I need you to find out everything you can about a seamstress named Isabella Martinez. She works at the Elegance Boutique in Westwood. I want to know where she's been for the past 15 years. Brandon, ever efficient, asked no questions. "Consider it done, Mr. Rivera." Daniel dropped the phone and leaned back in his leather chair. The memory of the last day with Isabella hit him like an avalanche. She was making pancakes, dancing barefoot in the kitchen, and the two of them were making plans to visit his mother on Sunday. Everything was normal, and then, when he returned from a meeting, the apartment was empty. No note, no explanation. Nothing. Only the lingering smell of breakfast in the air. And now, 15 years later, she had reappeared, holding the suit he would wear to marry someone else. The sound of the intercom snapped him out of his thoughts. "Mr. Rivera, your mother is here." Daniel took a deep breath. She was the last person he wanted to see at that moment, but he knew he had no choice. "Send her in." Mrs. Esther Rivera, a woman with a commanding presence and impeccable posture, entered with that look that always pierced through any lie. "Why didn't you answer my calls?" she asked, as direct as always. "I was busy with the suit fitting." The answer came out automatically, but laden with tension. Esther narrowed her eyes, suspicious. "Did everything go well?" Daniel hesitated. For a moment he thought about telling the truth, but something held him back. Instinct. Esther approached and placed her hand on her son's shoulder. "You fought hard to get here. The alliance with the Bennetts isn't just about love. It's the consolidation of your empire. Don't let anything distract you from that." It sounded more like a warning than advice. Daniel watched her carefully. There was something in that tone, a subtle urgency hidden in her words. He simply nodded. "It'll all work out, Mom." She walked toward the door, but before leaving, she let slip. "Julia's parents are excited about the Westlake project. You should keep your focus where it matters." As soon as she left, Daniel stood there for a while, looking out over the city from above. That phrase, "keep your focus where it matters." Did she know? Could it have something to do with Isabella's disappearance? It was an absurd thought. Or at least, that's what he believed. Until the intercom rang again. "Sir, I have the first information on Isabella Martinez." Daniel's heart raced. "Go on." "She has been working at the boutique for 3 years. Before that, she had a small atelier in the Lincoln Heights neighborhood, and she still lives there, with a teenager." Daniel straightened up in his chair. "A teenager?" "Yes, sir. His name is Lucas Martinez, 14 years old. He attends a public school in the area. An excellent student, according to the records." Daniel felt the blood turn cold. 14 years old. The arithmetic was simple, cruel, devastating. The bourbon glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor, scattering shards and truths he wasn't yet ready to face. He had a son he never knew. A son who lived only a few kilometers away, carrying the surname of the woman who had disappeared, taking with her everything he loved most. The next morning, Daniel was already in the car before the sun rose. He couldn't sleep, nor pretend that it was just another day. He asked Brandon to drive him to Isabella's address. Lincoln Heights felt like another world compared to his own. Modest houses, worn sidewalks, flowers in the windows. And there on the corner of 42nd Street and Altura Street stood the house. Terracotta, with geraniums in the window boxes, a detail he would never forget. Isabella had always loved flowers. "Are you sure about this, sir?" asked Brandon. But Daniel didn't answer. At 7:15, the door opened. He held his breath. A tall, thin boy with a backpack came out, busy on his cell phone. Daniel recognized his own way of walking, the same profile, the same eyes. It was as if he were looking at a younger version of himself. Shortly after, Isabella appeared. She handed something to the boy, who kissed her on the cheek before leaving. A simple gesture, full of affection. Daniel felt a pang in his chest. It was a scene he had never lived, a scene that had been taken from him. "Follow the boy," he instructed, without taking his eyes off the sidewalk. The car moved slowly, discreetly. Lucas walked as if he belonged to that neighborhood. He waved to the neighbors, smiled at the lady from the bakery. Part of that place. "He goes to school there," commented Brandon, pointing to a simple but well-kept school building. "He has good grades, seems to be well liked by his teachers." Daniel nodded, still in shock. It was all too much. What else did he not know? How many stories had been built without him? His phone buzzed. "I was Julia. Love, where are you? My parents are waiting. Remember, it's an important breakfast." He closed his eyes, took a deep breath. "An emergency came up with the Silver Lake project. I'll call you later." It was the second lie in 2 days. And this one hurt even more, because he knew that from now on, nothing would be the same. "Go back to the boutique," he ordered. The journey back was silent, heavy. He rehearsed 1,000 phrases in his head, but deep down he knew that no words would be enough. When he arrived, the boutique was just opening. The same attendant recognized him with surprise. "Mr. Rivera, we thought you'd only be back on Friday." "I need to speak with Isabella Martinez. She's in a fitting with a client. Can you wait?" He sat down. His heart felt like it was about to burst out of his chest. An hour later, she appeared. She stopped in the corridor when she saw him. The world seemed to freeze for an instant. "Mr. Rivera, your suit will be ready on Friday." "Lucas," he interrupted, "our son." Her face drained of color. "Not here," Isabella whispered, almost inaudibly, nervously looking around. "We need to talk somewhere else." Daniel took a step closer. "When? In another 15 years? She closed her eyes for a second, as if needing strength to continue. "I finish work at 6. There's a cafe on Vermont with 3rd. Meet me there." He nodded, and for the first time since that reunion, she seemed human. The mask of professionalism began to crack. When she left, Daniel stood there for a few seconds, trying to control the torrent of emotions. In that moment, nothing else in the world mattered but that conversation. The day dragged on as if time were playing a trick. Daniel canceled appointments, ignored calls, wandered around Los Angeles, unable to think of anything else. At 6 o'clock sharp, he entered the cafe. It was a simple, cozy place with the aroma of fresh coffee and old wood. Isabella was already there, alone, stirring her spoon in the cup as if she wanted to hide at the bottom. He sat down without a word. For a few seconds, neither spoke, until he finally exhaled, "Why?" She looked up, and what he saw in her eyes was not coldness, nor arrogance. It was fear and pain. "I didn't leave because I wanted to, Daniel," she said, her voice choked. "I was threatened. I received documents, photos, false accusations that could have destroyed you. And I was pregnant. Your mother and your father came looking for me. They said that if I stayed, they would ruin your career before it even began." Daniel felt his stomach turn. The chair seemed to sink beneath him. "My mother?" She nodded. "They never accepted me. They always thought I was not enough for you. And I believed that protecting you was the right thing to do, that disappearing was the only way to ensure you had the life you dreamed of. I loved you, Daniel. I still did." The revelation hit him like an avalanche. The pieces began to fall into place, the sudden coldness of his parents after her disappearance, the rush to set him on the corporate path, the unwavering support for the union with the Bennett family. "And why did you never come looking for me afterwards?" "Because when I realized they weren't going to follow through with their threats, it was already too late. Lucas was just a baby, and I had no strength left. I thought you had moved on." Daniel ran his hands over his face. "Does he know about me?" Isabella swallowed hard. "He thinks you abandoned him. I figured it was easier to leave him with anger than with doubts. And that hurt more than anything." That night, Daniel didn't go home, not to the apartment he shared with Julia, nor to the office. He needed to think. He needed to breathe. He wandered the city aimlessly until he parked in front of the building where he had lived with Isabella years ago. It was strange to see that place still standing, while everything inside him seemed to crumble. The next morning, still sleepless, he decided to confront the only person who could confirm it all, his mother. Esther received him with her usual elegant demeanor, but something in her gaze changed when she saw her son's expression. "You knew," he said it bluntly. "You sent her away." She tried to deny it, but Daniel pressed on. "You forged evidence, said she would destroy me, that she would ruin my career. Why?" Esther slowly stood up, as if it pained her physically. "Because she wasn't what you needed, Daniel. You had an empire to build, and she was just a seamstress." The coldness in her words made something inside him shatter completely. "She was the love of my life, and you took that away from me." Esther looked at him with a mix of regret and distorted pride. "And look where you've ended up." "On the edge of the abyss," he replied, "with a son I don't know, with a life that turned out to be a lie." Hours later, Daniel stood in front of Lucas's school. He watched the boy leave through the gates, laughing with his friends, completely oblivious to the storm approaching. For the first time, he felt fear of not being accepted, fear of being too late. But when Lucas looked his way, as if something inexplicably drew him, Daniel knew he had to try. He waited until the boy was a little away from the others, then approached. "Lucas?" The boy stopped. He looked puzzled. "You are I'm Daniel. I'm your father." Lucas froze. His eyes became unmoving, as if time had stopped. "My mother said you left." "It wasn't me who abandoned you, son." The words came out with difficulty, but they were real. "I spent years searching for you. I only just learned the truth." Lucas hesitated. He was young, but not naive. "If it's true, why did you only come to talk now?" Daniel knelt down until he was at the boy's eye level. "Because I only just found out about your existence, and if you give me a chance, I want to make up for every lost minute." The silence between them lasted for seconds, yet felt like an eternity, until Lucas looked away without a word and walked off. He didn't run, he just left, leaving Daniel there, alone, with guilt and hope. The next day, Daniel received a message. It was from an unknown number, short, direct, but carrying enormous weight. "Can we talk?" It was Lucas. They agreed to meet at a park near their home. Daniel arrived early, more anxious than he had ever been. He saw the boy approaching with measured steps, a closed expression on his face. They sat on a bench, under a tree. For a while, neither spoke, until Lucas finally said, "My mother cried yesterday. You made her cry." Daniel swallowed hard. "I know, but she also made me cry for 15 years. I'm not here to blame anyone. I'm here for you." Lucas still seemed defensive. "My mother raised me on her own. She never let anything be lacking. And you only show up now?" Daniel took a deep breath. "You have every right to feel that way. But I want you to know that I tried, that I looked for you, that I never knew you existed." The boy stared at him. "And now, are you going to marry that rich blonde and pretend we don't exist?" The sentence hit like a punch. "No, I'm not going to marry anyone anymore, because I realized my life was built on choices that weren't mine. I'm tired of living to please others. I want to start over, if you let me." Silence returned, but this time it was different. Lucas lowered his head and pulled something from his backpack. A notebook. Inside, sketches of buildings, streets, structures. "I like architecture," he said almost in a whisper. "I picked that up from you," Daniel replied with a timid smile. "Want me to show you a few things?" The boy hesitated and nodded. For the first time, something seemed to give way between them. When they said goodbye, there was still distance, but not rejection. It was a beginning. And for Daniel, that was already much more than he ever thought he'd have. It was the chance that fate, in its twisted way, decided to give him back. That night, he called Julia. He told her everything, no beating around the bush. She listened in silence, and in the end, said only, "You need to do what's right, and that doesn't include marrying me." Her voice was firm, but without anger. It was liberating. Later, he sought out Isabella, not to argue, but to truly talk. For the first time, the two of them were face to face without the weight of other people's lies. They talked for hours, like in the old days. She cried. He did too. And they made no promises. They only decided to try, for themselves, for their son, for the chance to rebuild something real, even if imperfect. 2 weeks later, Daniel was sitting at the table in Isabella's small kitchen in Lincoln Heights. In front of him, Lucas was working through geometry exercises, while Gabriella prepared dinner with a calm he could hardly remember. The scene was simple, but it carried enormous meaning. After all that time, he was finally there, present, whole, and most importantly, at peace with who he truly was. "Need help with this problem?" he asked, leaning over the boy's notebook. "It's about conic sections. I'm stuck." Daniel smiled. "You're not the only one who's ever been stuck on conics. Let me show you something." Gabriella watched the two discreetly. Seeing father and son so alike, leaning over that notebook, filled her with a mix of gratitude and fear. Gratitude for having that moment, fear that it might still be too fragile to last. But something was different about Daniel. He was no longer the man armored by success. Now he looked people in the eye. He listened. He was truly there. When dinner was ready, the three sat down. They talked about trivial things, laughed about school stories, and for a moment it felt as if they had never been apart. It was what she wanted, not a movie-like happy ending, but a sincere beginning of flesh and blood. Later, Daniel went out onto the house's balcony. He looked at the modest neighborhood lights and took a deep breath. So much had changed. He was still a businessman, still powerful, still respected. But now, he was more than that. He was a father. He was someone with roots. Someone who finally understood that true success lies in the connections we build, not in the achievements that Grace magazine covers. He went back inside, saw Isabella clearing the dishes, and Lucas focused on his homework. And in that moment, he knew for sure he had lost 15 years. But what he held in his hands now was worth more than everything he had silently built. Sometimes, life needs to completely fall apart so that we have the chance to rebuild it the right way. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next real-life stories of overcoming adversity. And tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I really want to know. Until the next story.